Every piece of information you've ever given away for free in a negotiation, an argument, or a confrontation, you handed it over the instant you reacted. Not with words, with timing. The speed of your response told the other side exactly how much this mattered to you, exactly where your limits sit, exactly which button to press again next time. Nobody teaches this, because almost nobody notices it happening to them. The game isn't won by whoever speaks with the most confidence. It's won by whoever controls the gap between provocation and response. Because that gap is where all the actual power in any interaction quietly lives. There are two separate processes running inside your brain every time something provokes you, and they are not equally fast. The first is automatic, fast, emotional, and largely involuntary. It fires the instant a threat, insult, or demand registers, activating the body before conscious thought has a chance to catch up. This is the system responsible for the words you regret, the offers you accept too quickly, the tell that gives away exactly how rattled you actually are. The second is deliberate, slower, effortful, and entirely capable of overriding the first, but only if given enough time to engage. This system weighs consequences, considers alternatives, and produces the version of a response you'd actually stand behind an hour later. The entire premise of mastering your reactions comes down to one mechanical fact. The deliberate system is always slower to activate than the automatic one. Whoever speaks first in a high-stakes moment is, almost by definition, speaking from the faster, cruder system. The one built for survival, not for strategy. Under stress, this imbalance gets worse, not better. Elevated arousal narrows attention, floods the body with urgency, and pushes decision, making further away from careful weighing and closer to instinctive shortcut. This is precisely why high-stakes moments, the ones that matter most, are also the moments where untrained people make their worst, fastest, least examined decisions. The person who has trained themselves to create even a small delay before responding isn't being timid. They're deliberately buying enough time for the slower, smarter system to actually engage before anything leaves their mouth. That delay is not hesitation. It's the entire mechanism separating a calculated response from an involuntary reflex. Here's the layer almost nobody thinks about consciously. Every fast reaction is also a signal, whether you intend it to be or not. The moment you respond instantly to a provocation, you reveal something valuable to the other party. How much this actually matters to you, how close they've come to a real limit, how predictable your next move will be under similar pressure. Information asymmetry theory puts this plainly. Whoever reveals their position first hands structural advantage to whoever's still watching and staying quiet. Reacting quickly doesn't just cost you composure. It costs you the one resource you can never get back in an interaction. The element of surprise about what you actually know, want, or intend to do next. Skilled negotiators understand something counterintuitive about human discomfort. Almost nobody can tolerate silence for very long, and the person who breaks it first almost always gives something away. A deliberate pause after an offer, an accusation, or a demand creates a vacuum most people feel compelled to fill. Left unfilled by you, that vacuum gets filled by the other party instead. With clarification, with justification, with additional terms they never intended to offer, simply because uncomfortable silence produces a stronger urge to talk than strategic caution can usually override. This is why patience functions less like a passive virtue and more like an active extraction tool. You're not just avoiding a mistake by staying quiet, you're actively pulling more information out of the room than you'd have gotten by responding right away. There's a structural principle in strategic theory that explains why patience so often outperforms speed, and it comes down to a simple asymmetry. The party who moves second gets to observe the first party's move before committing to anything. In any sequential interaction, A negotiation, a confrontation, a competitive decision. The first mover locks in a position based on incomplete information. The second mover gets to react to real, observed behavior instead of guessing. This is a structural advantage baked into the order of events, not a personality trait. Whoever can tolerate going second, without folding to the discomfort of not knowing what happens if they wait, walks away with more usable information every single time. Acting too early doesn't just risk a suboptimal outcome. It locks you into a position before you had access to the data that would have told you a better position existed. There's an even sharper version of this dynamic worth understanding sometimes. Choosing not to act is itself a form of commitment. A signal, communicated through stillness, that carries more weight than words could. When a party visibly refuses to rush toward a decision, it signals confidence in their own position strong enough to withstand delay. Counterparts reading that stillness often assume a stronger hand exists behind it than may actually be there. Because urgency reads as need, and the absence of urgency reads as strength, regardless of what's actually happening underneath. This is why composure under pressure so consistently gets misread as raw dominance. It isn't dominance in the traditional sense. It's the simple, disciplined refusal to hand over free information through visible urgency. The clearest illustration of deliberate delay changing an outcome doesn't come from a boardroom. It comes from 13 days in October, decades ago, when the United States and the Soviet Union stood closer to direct nuclear confrontation than at almost any other point in history. Advisors on multiple sides pushed for immediate, decisive military action. The instinct to respond fast, forcefully, and unmistakably was enormous, and understandable given the stakes. Instead, the decision-making process was deliberately slowed. Additional information was gathered. Alternative channels were quietly explored before any irreversible move was made public. That deliberate slowing down, buying time the automatic instinct wanted to skip entirely, created space for a resolution that a faster, more reactive process would very likely have foreclosed. The stakes in your next negotiation or confrontation will almost certainly be smaller. The mechanism at work is exactly the same. None of this means slower is always better, and any framework claiming otherwise is oversimplifying a genuinely two-sided reality. There are entire categories of high-stakes decisions. A firefighter reading a collapsing structure, a driver avoiding a sudden hazard, a trained operator responding to an active threat, where deliberate slowing down isn't wisdom, it's a liability. In these domains, expertise shows up specifically as fast, accurate, pattern-based intuition, built through repetition until it operates faster than conscious deliberation ever could. There's also a real cost to over-control. Chronic suppression of emotional reaction, sustained without genuine internal regulation, tends to produce rebound effects, the suppressed reaction resurfacing later, often with more intensity than it would have carried in the moment. The goal was never to feel nothing. It was to create enough space between stimulus and response that the reaction, when it comes, is chosen rather than involuntary. The skill isn't slowness for its own sake. It's knowing which category of situation you're actually standing inside before deciding how much delay the moment can afford. It's worth being precise about what this actually is, because it gets confused with manipulation more often than it should. Controlling your own reaction time isn't deception. You're not fabricating information or misleading anyone about your intentions. You're simply refusing to hand over free, unearned insight into your internal state before you've decided you want to share it. The distinction matters. Manipulation extracts value through false signals. Strategic composure withholds nothing except your own vulnerability, and vulnerability was never owed to anyone by default in a high-stakes exchange. Translated into something usable, The mechanism breaks down into a small number of concrete moves, repeatable in almost any confrontation or negotiation you'll ever face. Before responding to anything provocative, create a deliberate gap. Even a few seconds is enough to shift control from the automatic system to the deliberate one. Instead of countering a demand immediately, ask a genuine, open-ended question that forces the other party to reveal more of their actual position before you commit to yours. Before any decision carrying real long-term weight, build in a mandatory delay. Enough time for the initial emotional charge to settle before a final answer gets locked in. And throughout, actively name the emotional state you're in before acting on it. A small act of labeling that alone tends to reduce the intensity of the automatic reaction driving you. None of these require confidence, charisma, or dominance. They require only the discipline to let a few extra seconds pass before your mouth commits to something your calmer self might not have chosen. Every reaction you've ever regretted came from the same place as a gap that closed too fast before the slower, smarter part of you had a chance to weigh in. The people who look unshakable under pressure aren't wired differently than you. They've simply trained themselves to protect that gap, deliberately, consistently, until patience under provocation stopped feeling like restraint and started feeling like their actual default state. You don't win the game by reacting the fastest. You win it by being the last person in the room still gathering information while everyone else has already shown their hand. Master the gap. The game takes care of itself.